Southern Cross Nightly News. First at 6.
Tonight, former Premier Harry Holgate loses his battle with cancer. Incat boss Bob Clifford voices fears for the future. And in sport, the Aussies suffer humiliation against South Africa. Good evening, I'm Stephen Titmus. Former Tasmanian Premier and Labor leader Harry Holgate lost his fight against cancer today. He died at his Hillwood home peacefully in the company of his wife Ros and their 4 children. He was 63. Respected for his contribution to Tasmanian politics over 18 years, Harry Holgate leaves behind a legacy of decency and dignity.
Harry Holgate's battle with cancer began in October last year. By the time the former Premier and journalist saw his doctor complaining of feeling off colour, the cancer had spread through his body. An intensive course of chemotherapy, too late to perform the miracle he said at the time he was hoping for. The father of 4 died today, surrounded by his family. As they mourn in private, his former colleagues are paying their respects.
I would like to express to the family of Mr Holgate the sincere condolences from the government and all the people of Tasmania.
Harry Holgate began his political career in 1974 as a member for Bass. He was Premier for just 135 days between 1982 and 83, during a time of deep community division over the Franklin. But Premier Rundle says he left his mark.
When his government fell, all of those in the political system and beyond were very impressed with the dignity with which he handed over government early in the 80s. And he was a very well-known and likeable character in Tasmanian politics, and I'm personally very sad today, and I know that Tasmanians will join me in offering our sincere condolences to Mr Holgate's family.
After a career of highs and lows in government and in opposition, Harry Holgate lost his seat in 1992, but he retained a high-level interest in his great loves, tourism and horse racing. Labor leader Michael Field says Harry Holgate will be sorely missed.
Harry will be missed by everyone who knew him, whether that's in journalism, in politics or in the tourism industry, because he had this infectious ability to mix well with people, to put forward ideas, and whenever there was a setback, to keep looking forward.
A state funeral for Harry Holgate will be held this week.
Representing more than 10% of the state's exports, Incat in Hobart is a symbol of hope for Tasmania's flagging economy. But in an exclusive interview today, Bob Clifford says all this could change if the federal government axes the shipbuilding bounty.
The arrival of the USS aircraft carrier Kitty Hawk was all the excuse Bob Clifford needed to put his latest cat through its paces. Even with Kitty Hawk at full steam of 30 knots, number 43 made it look as though it was stationary. But Bob Clifford's a worried man. If the federal government removes the 5% shipbuilding bounty, he says the production line could stall.
European competitors are going to get the equivalent of shipbuilding bounty at double the rate that we have been getting, and they're going to get that for at least another 4 years, and we're going to have to be very, very much on our toes to try and survive against that sort of competition.
The bounty's already supposed to be history, but the federal government's agreed to extend it till the end of the year.
Well, it helped us in the short term, but that period's over now. It takes well over 12 months to build one of these ships, and of course we can no longer sell boats with the benefit of the shipbuilding bounty.
With more than 1,000 employees and 800 subcontractors, Bob Clifford has clout. But only time will tell if that's enough to convince the federal government that Australia, and more importantly Tasmania, needs Incat.
The federal government claims it will ban pornography on pay television. The Communications Minister says it will close a legal loophole that's allowed late-night screenings of R-rated movies.
Sexually explicit movies are being beamed into people's lounge rooms on Galaxy Pay TV, even though federal parliament believed that would be illegal.
I don't think that's acceptable. It's against the intent of what the parliament had in mind, and I think we ought to reflect that community view.
The government believes the R-rated movies available at extra cost are slipping through a loophole in the law.
It now seems possible that you could run at least soft porn and argue that because it's late at night and because you're charging a premium price, that somehow isn't going to a wider audience.
The opposition will consider whether to support the ban, which will be just one of the major media issues coming before Parliament. The Senate meets tomorrow to begin a crucial debate on telecommunications, with a complex package of 11 new laws to give us better and cheaper communications. But that's not the only contentious issue. The Medicare levy is also up for discussion. The opposition believes this surprise admission by the Health Minister today sets the scene for a tax rise.
The Medicare levy has really got nothing to do with health. It's a way of collecting revenue.
When Dr Woodridge says the Medicare levy is just another tax, that means you're about to pay a higher Medicare levy, but your local public hospital won't see the proceeds.
The government is being encouraged by private insurers to break its election promise not to change Medicare, with the MBF today releasing a survey showing 3/4 of Australians believe fixing up hospitals is more important.
They're quite prepared to allow the government to drop off its election promise if it means that they see some improvement in public hospital services.
Martin Bryant's former lawyer John Avery today denied breaching security at Risdon Prison by photographing Bryant in November last year. Mr Avery says he took a picture of the prisoner with his consent after an interview with him. Avery says he had no clear purpose for the photographs at the time and destroyed them in Bryant's presence when prison officers raised concerns over the move. Earlier this week, Avery shelved plans for a book on Bryant after his former client objected. A furious row has erupted in Victoria over claims the ex-lover of a former cabinet minister has been paid more than $100,000. Victorian Premier Jeff Kennett especially targeted the newspaper, which alleges government funds secretly settled claims against his one-time finance minister, Ian Smith.
Former Victorian Finance Minister Ian Smith resigned from Cabinet in May 1995 amid a public feud over his personal life. His Chief of Staff, Cheryl Harris, had claimed she was pregnant with his child and accused him of assault, discrimination and breach of contract. Today, Premier Kennett attacked an article in Melbourne's Age newspaper claiming the state government had paid Harris more than $100,000 in an out-of-court settlement.
The Age are developing a reputation for deliberately spreading falsehoods.
Mr Smith says while he can't comment on the conditions of the settlement, the article is wrong and misleading.
Mr Kennett says due to a confidentiality clause in the agreement, he can neither confirm nor deny whether taxpayers' money was used in the settlement.
I cannot answer any more. Unless the parties agree to release, I can make no comment.
Mr Smith says if all parties agree, he is happy for the details to be made public. The Victorian opposition is vowing to pursue the matter.
The Premier must immediately reveal whether or not Victorians had to foot the bill to get Mr Smith out of his mess, and I'll be raising this matter in Parliament to find out whether or not taxpayers' funds were used.
A US military aircraft had an emergency landing in Brisbane overnight after fire broke out in an engine. Emergency services prepared for the worst when the plane with 19 people on board radioed for help.
More than 100 fire, police and ambulance workers were standing by. An hour out of Brisbane en route to Honolulu, the KC-135 was forced to return when one of its engines shut down and burst into flames.
To land on the first approach, it landed safely, thank goodness.
There are reports a request to dump the fuel load into Moreton Bay before landing was denied. 19 people were on board the refueler that was part of the joint Australian-US military exercise Tandem Thrust at Shoalwater Bay. The war games there are continuing. This morning, dramatic images unfolded with an amphibious assault on Freshwater Beach. Hundreds of US Marines invaded the shore in landing craft launched from the Navy ship USS Essex. Cyclone Justin won the battle by delaying today's exercise, but the Marines won the war. Tandem Thrust is now in its decisive stage, the practice warfare continuing until Saturday.
Coming up after the break, walking against want around the state, and the big wheels hit the streets for charity. Move to stop exporters from claiming airfares for trade and marketing has been branded foolish by Tasmanian Premier Tony Rundle. The Premier has written to all Tasmanian federal Liberals for help to reverse the Senate committee decision.
Premier Rundle says 150 small and medium Tasmanian businesses stand to lose if the Senate Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade Legislation Committee gets its way. The committee proposes major cuts to marketing funding to the nation's exporters. At present, companies can claim airfares, recognition of the value of one-on-one contact with overseas trading partners. The proposed changes limit the claims to 2 trips.
Bureaucrats don't understand trade as well as small business. There'll be many Tasmanian companies who have broken into those Asian markets after 2 or 3 years solid traipsing to and fro to Asia.
The Premier believes the move would threaten relations between Tasmanian producers and business leaders overseas, particularly in Asia, where doing business depends on building friendship and trust.
The Asians want to see the principals and get to know them before they'll sign deals, and also going to places like Tokyo, Japan, is hugely expensive, so it'll be a very foolish decision if we cut back this benefit for exporters.
The review hearings will go ahead tomorrow in Canberra.
This weekend, Tasmanians have been asked to dig into their pockets to help unfortunate people overseas. The annual Walk Against Want saw hundreds pour onto the streets.
Jump on your bike, grab the kids, dig out the leash. Doesn't matter how you do it, as long as you join in. That's the message for the 30th Walk Against Want. And on the streets of Hobart and Launceston, that's what they did. Each year across the nation, more than 500,000 people are involved in the walk, and in Tasmania, participants help raise an estimated $50,000. The money is used to fund long-term development projects overseas, allowing people to work themselves out of poverty and realise their basic rights.
Olympic sprinter Dean Capobianco's competition future is being decided by an international tribunal in Monte Carlo. Athletics Australia allowed him to compete in Atlanta despite a previous positive test for steroids. But now he faces an appeal which could see him banned for 4 years.
It may be a place where the world's well-to-do come to take it easy.
Confident your name will be cleared in the next 24 hours?
Absolutely.
You nervous now?
Absolutely, mate, yeah. But Dean Capobianco's visit to Monte Carlo is no holiday. He and his lawyers are finally facing the International Amateur Athletics Federation. One German, one Finn and a Senegalese. 3 tribunal members, not a court of law.
There are many defences to this case against him, and they're all substantial defences as well.
Among those defences are claims that when he tested positive for drugs last May, testing procedures, sampling and specimen transport was suspect. But most controversial is the claim that the Olympic sprinter could have ingested the substance simply by eating contaminated meat.
It's interesting because it seems to be that there will be a sort of battle between various scientists, and there will be some comment on whether this is likely, this is possible, this is feasible.
And that battle between scientists and other expert witnesses will mean more to Capobianco than anyone else. The threatened 4-year ban would effectively end his career.
Back home now, trucking for charity today. 43 big wheelers took to the streets of Launceston to raise money for the students of St George's Special School. The convoy drew hundreds of children as it made its journey to Longford. Impossible to ignore and bent on success. This year's annual charity truck run would have made the Pied Piper proud. The passengers were collected from school this morning, travelling the city streets in grand style on their way to Longford for a day's outing. Now in its 15th year, the event is being hailed as the best yet.
To give the kids at St George's School a bit of a run in the trucks, to sort of give them a bit of a once-a-year fun.
The party just got better. The convoy's arrival in Longford met with food, fun and prizes to top off the day. Meanwhile, another young group was putting organisers to the test at the Launceston Safety Centre. Twins, triplets and beyond were there to celebrate National Multiple Birth Awareness Week. The word is such births are on the increase. The organisers expect the event to continue to grow. Time for the day's sport now with Rob Fairs, and Jamie Cox blasts yet another century.
He does, mate, but unfortunately that wasn't enough to get the Tigers into the Shield final. We'll have all the action of that after the break. Good evening, everybody, and the Aussie wickets tumble at Port Elizabeth.
Tonight.
They didn't do it.
They didn't do it. Chasing headlines.
All of a sudden, pow!
Beating deadlines. Michael Keaton, Glenn Close.
Run what we've got.
For the first time. The paper, 8:30 tonight.
Growing more trees in Tasmania. Supporting local wood skills. And firms exporting wood and other forest products. Forestry is growing Tasmania's future.
The Genome catalogue from Sew World and Stewart's is out now. Save on sewing machines from just $2.99. Computerised sewing is now $7.99, and this 4-thread overlocker reduced to $3.99 at Sew World in Launceston and Stewart's Sewing Centres, Burnie and Devonport.
Give Gran a monkey, a bat, a giraffe, or a bear, or perhaps a bouquet of fresh flowers of your choice. The freshest and largest selection of flowers and balloons are at International Flowers and Balloon Land. Don't wonder what to give. Call Sharon for ideas on birthdays, weddings, or just to say hello. For homes, hotels and offices, it's easy. Call International Flowers and Balloon Land in the Novotel Yorktown Square. Open 7 days a week. Get visual, get noticed with SIG Signs for product and promotion. Make the right move to SIG Signs. They're experts of computerised engraving in personalised key rings, trophies, plaques and industrial labels. Inspect our factory shop at 5 Johnson Street, Upper Burnie.
Tonight's sport is brought to you by one of the all-time winners, the traditional national pie.
An incredible turnaround on day 2 of the second test between Australia and South Africa in Port Elizabeth. Resuming at 1 for 10, Australia crumbled to be all out for 108, a first innings deficit of 101. Hansi Cronje, one of the 3 bowlers to take 2 wickets, but Alan Donald was the standout performer.
If the stands were a scorebook, these would be Australia's, with runs hard to find, but wickets shining like brass. Mark Taylor first for 8. He's now failed to reach 20 in his last 8 test innings.
You're asking me about his form. He's failed. You know, I'm not sure. I'm not inside his head, so I don't know how it's affecting him.
Australia's only pleasing exit, wicket-taker Sean Pollock unable to bowl again with a hamstring strain, but South Africa's attack lifted.
That was sharp.
By lunch, 3 for 59. Mark Waugh falling to Hansi Cronje for 20. The morning's play hard to read for the captain, and the lines of despair only darkened in the afternoon.
Mistake here, bowlers will throw to the keeper's end and he's out.
Matthew Elliott, 23, the first of 3 wickets in the space of 6 runs. Steve Waugh, 8. Michael Bevan, a duck, both beaten by Brian McMillan. Ian Healy next to clock off for 5, 7 for 85.
Goes around. He's taken it.
Unsettled by Alan Donald, Shane Warne watched White Lightning strike again. Greg Blewett, 13.
Bowled him.
With urgent swings, Australia passed 100, but added just 8 more. Warne 18 and Glenn McGrath naught, filling in the final blanks of a sorry card.
Away gets the outside edge, and he's caught behind.
Embarrassing Australia's batsmen, openers Adam Barker and Gary Kirsten swept South Africa to 83 by stumps. The overall lead, 184. The only card looking healthy for the visitors, the dance card.
Good on him.
Completing Australia's miserable day, Steve Waugh aggravated a groin injury, and he may be in doubt for next Friday's final test in Pretoria.
Well, Tasmania has missed out on a place in next week's Sheffield Shield final despite a brilliant century by opener Jamie Cox. The Tigers needing to win outright, declaring its second innings closed at lunch on the final day, leading by 305. Cox making a superb 125. In reply, the Blues winning by 6 wickets.
The day at none for 135. Hills adding 14 before McGill bowled him for 75.
And bowled him round his legs.
The Tigers lost 3 more wickets to be 4 for 252, with Miller swinging the bat, bagging 3 quick sixes.
Well, that is huge.
Ponting then fell for 22. Boone declaring at lunch, Tasmania 5 for 290. The Blues needed 305 to win. Slater and Davidson finding the boundaries and pushing the score along. In the first over after tea, Slater was caught by Marsh off Miller for 79. At the Gabba, Queensland cemented their chance for a Shield final berth by defeating South Australia outright. With New South Wales a short time ago less than 100 runs short of Tasmania's total and edging towards victory at the SCG, Queensland's berth in the finals is now virtually assured.
And Queensland secured their place in the final after thrashing South Australia by 137 runs at the Gabba. The Bulls needing just 7 balls this morning to claim outright points against the Redbacks and take on Western Australia in next week's final. Well, the fate of the Hobart Football Club is in the hands of its players after a meeting this afternoon attempting to resolve the uncertainty surrounding the club's future. With 3 weeks until the start of the new season and the club racked by disunity, the Tigers want players and supporters to turn out to training tomorrow to ensure the club sees out the season.
With at least 20 players leaving Hobart since last year, the club is struggling to find enough players to fulfil its obligations to the TFL to field 3 teams. With senior players reportedly unhappy, the Tigers board met with a representative today, giving the players one last chance to show a united front.
If we get all the players on the track that have trained pre-season and make a commitment to the club and the commitment to the coach, Gary Williams, the club will survive and go into the future.
Hobart is expecting at least 38 players to attend training tomorrow, and as it tries to prepare for the new season, anyone perceived to be a disruptive influence will be shown the door.
There's obviously someone that's undermining the work of the coach and the players at the club, and also the board of management, that they're undermining all the work we're trying to do by leaking incorrect information to the media. And it's just like a disease. It's grown and grown and grown to the stage that with actually players are starting to believe it.
The negative publicity of the past few weeks affecting not only the morale of the players and officials, but also the Tigers' recruiting ability.
We've got some players in Melbourne that want to come now, but under the circumstances, we're not prepared to put them on a plane until we know that the club will be able to field 3 good sides.
Well, in better news, Carlton is through to Friday night's AFL Ansett Cup final against Geelong after defeating St Kilda by 10 points at Waverley last night. The Blues overcame a poor start to take a 41-point lead over the Saints at 3/4 time. But just as the game was shaping as a one-sided encounter, Stuart Lowe put the Saints within 3 points of the lead, kicking 4 consecutive goals late in the final term. Starving off the late challenge, Dean Rice steered through a set shot from 35 metres to secure the Blues' second straight Ansett Cup finals berth. Tight stuff. Well, former world cycling champion Gary Niewant has been found guilty of taking a banned substance. He was fined $1,000 following a test in New Zealand in January. Meantime, top Australian cyclists Darren Hill and Lucy Tyler-Sharman are ready for their assault on the 1997 Australian Track Cycling Championships in Launceston. The superstars are in good form and are keen to turn it on for the masses. Since current Australian champion Darren Hill came on the scene, the superstar has dominated the sprint event. But despite the absence of arch-rival Gary Niewant, Hill expects tough opposition.
Well, it's going to come from, I'd say, Anthony Peden and Sean Eadie. You know, there might be someone coming out of the blue.
Huge crowds are expected to witness the showdown as the sprint king defends his crown.
Every time I've rode the sprint, I've won it from juvenile through to senior. So, you know, I've beaten Gary, I've beaten Stephen Pate. So, you know, hopefully I can come over here and take it out again.
Lucy Tyler-Sharman will also be one to watch, her goal the pursuit title, but she also expects to be put to the test.
Probably the best challenge I would get would be from Victoria, Karen Barrow, who's been training with me at the AIS, doing the same sort of efforts. And she's been riding pretty good times too. And other than that, I don't know.
The champ says it's a shame Kathy Watt withdrew from the event, denying fans a long-awaited showdown between the two.
Of course I'm disappointed, but I think more so the public's been disappointed. Australia's taken really sort of a bad look at Australian cycling this year because of what happened. And, you know, it might have gone a long way toward giving us some good publicity if we'd had a bit of a face-off and a match.
And Steve, just a couple of the superstar cyclists we've got in town this week.
Yes, Rob, it's going to be a big week up there at the Silverdome. That's all the news and sport. Paula along shortly with all the weather details.
Rather ominous-looking clouds over Hobart today, and there were a few light showers about southern and western regions. We didn't quite make it to our expected top. 21 degrees was reached at Lowhead and Bicheno, while Lake Leak fell to 1 overnight. The satellite shows tropical cyclone Justin over the Coral Sea, well east of the Queensland coast. And the close-up shows cloud over the entire state, more so over the western south. The winds variable tomorrow from 5 to 15 knots, with swells to 5 metres in the south and 4 in the west. Tomorrow's chart indicates that the high will move east to lie near Melbourne. The forecast fine for Burnie and Devonport, 9 to 20 degrees. Fine over the west coast, 17 the maximum. For the east, fine conditions also, 21 the top there. Launceston, 8 to 22. And for Hobart, fine also, 9 to 18 degrees. Fine on Tuesday, apart from some developing drizzle about the north coast. Showers in the west and north on Wednesday, extending throughout in the afternoon. And a cloudy day on Thursday with scattered showers or drizzle.
Early fog for Melbourne tomorrow, then a fine 25 degrees, an early shower over in Perth, but mainly fine for other centres. So the advice is, Steve, enjoy tomorrow's fine weather while it lasts.
Yes, thanks very much, Paula. If you joined us late, former Tasmanian Premier and Labor leader Harry Holgate lost his fight against cancer today. He died at his Hillwood home peacefully in the company of his wife Ros and their 4 children. He was 63. That's the weekend news, sport and weather. Join Lisa Whitehead tomorrow, first at 6. Enjoy your evening. Good night.